Mr Chair.
Catherine Delahunty.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. I'm pleased to be able to take a call on this issue, although I haven't sat much of the time on primary production. But I want to talk about the annual review of Landcorp 2013 and also their statement of intent, which also looks forward from 2013-14 to 2017. There is an odd disconnect between the rhetoric in these documents and the rhetoric that they came to the Select Committee with, which my colleague was part of, and what actually happens on the ground by Landcorp. Because, believe it or not, I was at the AMP show the other day in Waikato talking about the statement of intent, which may not seem like something you'd expect the public to be interested in, but I had a petition about Landcorp, and the public were very interested in the statement of intent because they live with the downstream effects of the statement of intent, which is the pollution of the Waikato River and the increasing contamination of the waterways downstream of Landcorp's dairy conversions. And so there is actually a great deal of public interest in where Landcorp, who are the biggest farmer in this country, say they're going in the annual review in terms of the environment, in terms of downstream, and what they're modelling. So in the report to the House from the Select Committee about environmental sustainability for the annual review of 2013-14, Landcorp assert it's an environmentally savvy, quote, farmer, and say that they're serving the interests of both the environment and the industry. But when I took these quotes to the people at this AMP show who was signing my petition, people were saying, but why are they converting volcanic soil forestry into dairy farms which are going to increase the loading of nutrients to the point where farmers downstream will not be able to meet their own budgets? And so we have the unique situation of Waikato Federated Farmers and others saying that Landcorp, the leading government agency around farming, the actual biggest farmer in the country, is failing the farmers downstream. So it was quite extraordinary to hear people talking in the Waikato about their understanding of the statement of intent, which was that Landcorp intends to convert more and more land into dairying up on the volcanic plateau, and that Federated Farmers there wanted a conversation on a moratorium because they have read the statement of intent and they know that anything between 17,000, which is Landcorp's figure, and up to 70,000, which is some of the local figures, of more dairy cows are going to be at the head of that catchment. And the Waikato River just can't take too much more of this. Landcorp in its statement of intent saying that it's interested in community engagement by fronting up to concerns about, and I'm quoting here, about environmental impact of farming. This is not fronting up. This is the worst role model from a government agency for good farming practice that we've seen in a very long time. I mean, we could talk about the commodity price, we could talk about reliance on selling milk powder to China, we could talk about all those vulnerabilities. But what's even worse is that we're selling out water quality, not just for now, but for many years to come. Because if you know anything about how it works in the environment, you know that contamination of the waterways and upper catchments takes years and years to filter through. And that's why Waikato Federated Farmers are saying, hang on, what about us downstream who are trying to balance the nutrient budget? So it's not acceptable to put in a statement of intent these kind of rhetorical devices about being environmentally savvy while being the main culprit in the continuing destruction of long-term water quality in this country. There is a responsibility when we review Landcorp to actually make sure that they are doing role modelling best practice. This is worst practice. This is 60% of monitored rivers no longer swimmable. This is a nutrient budget for Waikato farmers that will blow out, not because of their practices, but because of the practices of the government-owned Landcorp farms and Landcorp-managed farms in the Upper Waikato. So the people are signing the petition because of this statement of intent, the intent to continue to destroy the environment for the sake of a monoculture agricultural intensification in a catchment that just simply can't take it, is irresponsible on behalf of Landcorp. So if we look at their Their rhetoric, they've got this saying called leading the way, which some poor person had to make up. Mr. Chair.
Catherine Delahunty.
And so leading the way, thank you, Mr. Chair, was something that some poor person in the department had to make up a new word for what they're doing. And so they say their bottom lines are volume, value, efficiency, people and the environment. And environment, of course, is the last one. They also say they have an aspiration from 2013-14 to now to go from 1.5% to 5% pastoral livestock. So that's more than tripling the number of current pastoral livestock on Landcorp farms. So forget about climate change. Forget about the fact that they're going to cut down the forests that would have mitigated some of that and turn them into dairy farms, which no one wants. So why are we doing this? Why are we cutting down forests and converting land to a polluting greenhouse gas emitting industry when our climate targets are a joke already? And it's a government department in their own statement of intent that are leading the way on this. I went to a public meeting the other night at Lake Karapiro, and there was a famous rower there, Mahi Drysdale, and he said, "My lake is turning pink as a result of the corporate intent of Landcorp in this catchment. My lake is turning pink." He may not have used the word statement of intent or corporate. Maybe that was me hearing it, but he was very concerned about what was happening in the upper catchment. He was saying, "I've been rowing this lake for many, many years, and all I can see is degraded water quality and what's happening upstream." And then to hear that the Landcorp's commitment, unlike the farmers in the lower Waikato who are actually trying to meet nutrient budget and trying to manage what is now acknowledged as a damaging approach to farming, when there's no fencing, when there's nutrient loads that rivers can't take, when there's phosphorus, nitrates and sediment, they're trying to modify, they're trying to meet those agreements, but Landcorp is not. Landcorp, Mahi Drysdale can be assured that Landcorp will continue, according to these plans, to convert the upper Waikato, and we won't even talk about the Manawatu because that's still pretty much a disaster, into more pollution. So instead of just talking about awash with milk, Mr. Chairman, we're actually awash with cow urine, pollution, and a government-owned enterprise that plans to do that more. They plan to do that more. And I can't even get sense out of them as to how many more cows they're going to put into that area. But one thing can be sure, we cannot keep adding to the nutrient load, which is what they plan to do in all of their documents. And they're leading the way, they are leading us away from a solution. And it's going to be hugely cost effective. It's going to cost us an enormous amount of money, because if you look at what the government is already spending on Lake Taupo, Lake Rotorua, Manawatu River and Lake Wairarapa, these are multi-million-dollar cleanups because of the long-term bad agricultural intensification practices in the catchments, and now Landcorp is going to make that worse. The Green Party believes that Landcorp should be saying in these statements of intent, in these plans that go from 2013 and look ahead, they should be coming to primary production and saying, we will role model best practice in the following ways. We will actually set up a farming system that is non-polluting, a farming system that is based on, rather than the permanent excessive growth model, based on proper management of dairying and other industries that will not convert land that should stay in trees, that will protect the environment for the long term. They should be the leading agency that are doing that. But these documents that I have here, these reports, are all saying to us that Landcorp's way back in the 1950s, and they are not supporting the farming sector, let alone the water quality of this country. And if the government agency is incapable of planning for in these documents or modelling protection for water quality, everybody downstream is going to suffer, everybody downstream is going to pay the price, and they are and they will. And when you get the Federated Farmers and the Green Party and the Olympic rowers and the community groups all saying the same thing, these statements of intent need to be reviewed, they need to be taken apart, and we need to tell Landcorp, you do not have a mandate to pollute this country. You do not have a mandate to contaminate water with your bad agricultural practices. This is a disgrace.
Mr Chair.
The